Hello, my name is Carrie Brown and I'm with the Central Mississippi Regional Library System. Today I'm going to be reading to you chapters 3 and 4 of Calendar Mysteries, New Year's Eve Thieves. Written by Ron Roy, illustrated by John Stephen Gurney, published by Random House, New York. Chapter 3, The Secret Code. Brian, Nate, and Lucy came sprinting across the street. Bradley told them what Ellie had said and showed them the note. "The woman dropped it," he said. "What woman?" his older brother asked. Bradley pointed at the two strangers who were now passing the post office. "The short one is a woman. I saw her lipstick." Nate squinted. "Or it's a man pretending to be a woman," he said. "Thieves are so tricky." "And they both have tans," Bradley added. "I'll bet it's makeup," Nate said, "to fool the police." Brian, Nate, and Lucy huddled around Bradley, peering at the paper. WLKN2 GLES EONWDY 2D and H NONFRMLN 2P. "This is just a bunch of initials," Nate said. "It might as well be written in a foreign language." Lucy took the note from Bradley. "Do you think they're staying at the Shangri-La Hotel?" she said. "I don't think thieves stay at hotels in the same town where they're robbing houses," Nate said. "They just steal stuff, then take off." "But if they're not staying at the hotel, how did they get this Shangri-La Hotel paper?" Brian asked. "Maybe they stole it," Bradley said. "Mr. Linkletter keeps some on his desk." "What does it mean?" Nate asked. "It's like a word puzzle," Lucy said. "I have a book of these. See, most of the vowels are missing." "The D, H, and P are underlined," Brian said, "but none of the other letters are." "It's a burglar's code," Bradley whispered. "Guys, they're walking toward the bank," Brian said. "We have to keep following them." Lucy gave the mysterious note back to Bradley and he slipped it into his pocket. The four kids followed slowly, keeping the two strangers in sight. "That tall guy is weird," Brian said. "Before he left, his left leg was limping, but now it's his right leg." "Are you sure?" Lucy asked. Brian tapped his head. "I never forget a limper," he said. "Hold it," Bradley whispered. The kids crouched behind a row of bushes in front of the post office. "They're stopping at the bank." The two strangers put on their faces against the bank window. Then the man in the cowboy hat pulled a notebook and pencil from a pocket in his backpack. He wrote something and put the notebook away. The woman took a picture of the bank. "They're taking more pictures," Nate said. "We have to do something." "Like what?" Lucy asked. "All they're doing is looking." "Yeah, looking in bank windows and writing stuff in a notebook and taking pictures," Nate said. "That's what thieves do when they're making a plan." The bank clock now read 3:30. "At least the bank is closed," Brian said. "They can't get in." "The doors were locked at Mrs. Wong's house too," Nate said. "But they still got in." "We don't know that for sure," Lucy reminded him. "Someone else could have stolen her computer." "They're on the move again," Nate said. "Let's go." The kids followed the limping man and the woman in the ski mask farther down Main Street. The strangers stopped in front of the elderly housing building. The woman snapped a picture and the man wrote something in his little notebook. Then they went in. "Oh my gosh, they're gonna rob those old people," Brian said. "The police station is next door," Bradley said. "Maybe we should tell Officer Fallon what's going on." "But nothing is going on," Lucy said. "Officer Fallon would get mad if we asked him to arrest two innocent people." Bradley shook his head. "He'd get madder if they robbed the whole town," he said. "So what should we do?" Nate asked. "Let's just wait a minute," Brian said. "But if we hear anyone scream, we run to the police station, okay?" They waited and no one screamed. 3 minutes later, an old man and woman came out. They had white hair and walked stooped over. One carried a big shopping bag, and they held on to each other as they walked down the steps. The four kids watched the old couple shuffle down Main Street. At the Shangri-La Hotel, one of them opened the bag, took out a camera, and aimed it at the hotel's entrance. "It's them!" Brian yelled. "The thieves changed into different disguises!" Chapter 4. Who are the Gronces? "Are you sure?" Bradley said. "Wasn't one of them carrying a backpack?" "I'll bet it's inside that shopping bag," Nate said. "They must have had extra clothes and wigs in there, too." "Neither one is limping," Lucy said. "Ha!" Brian said. "That's one of their tricks. Sometimes they limp, and sometimes they don't." "Still think they're just innocent tourists?" Nate asked Lucy. "I really don't know what to think," Lucy muttered under her breath. The white-haired couple entered the hotel. "Maybe they're after Mr. Linkletter's computer," Nate said. "We'd better warn him." "But we can't let them know we're following them," Lucy said. "We can watch them through the door," Bradley said. "They'll never notice us." The four kids crept up to the thick glass door and peered inside. They saw the old couple talking to Mr. Linkletter at the counter. They were smiling. Then they walked toward the elevators. "Let's go," Bradley said. He shoved the door open and the kids piled in. Mr. Linkletter's eyes got wide when he saw the kids. His eyebrows went up an inch and his mustache twitched. "Hello, young people," he said. "What brings you out on New Year's Eve? Are you checking into our most expensive room?" Bradley knew Mr. Linkletter was fooling with them. He was always joking around. But you couldn't tell because he almost never smiled. "We're too young to check into a hotel," Brian said. Bradley looked at the counter. There was a sign that said, "C. Linkletter, Manager." There was the little bell that new guests rang when they came in. And there was the neat pile of green paper with Shangri-La Hotel printed at the top. Mr. Linkletter nodded. "Indeed," he said. "So, how can I help you today?" "That old couple you were just talking to," Nate said. "Are they staying here?" Mr. Linkletter crossed his arms. "I never discuss my guests," he said. "Why do you want to know?" We're playing a game," Nate said. Mr. Linkletter raised one eyebrow. He waited. "You see," Nate went on, "we pick someone we don't know, and we follow them. We pretend they're really important, like a movie star or the president." "Yeah, and we try to guess stuff about them," Brian added. "It's practice," Nate said, beaming his best smile at Mr. Linkletter, "in case we become detectives when we grow up." Bradley looked at his feet so he wouldn't laugh. "I assure you, young, detectives," Mr. Linkletter said, "that Mr. and Mrs. Grantz aren't movie stars, and they don't live in the White House either." He turned the register and put a long finger under a name. "Mr. A. Grantz, 1212 12th Street, Miami, Florida." "Great," Bradley said. "That means I win the game. I guess they were from Florida because of their tans." "The Grantzes are old friends of this hotel," Mr. Linkletter went on. "They come to Green Lawn every Christmas to visit Mr. Grantz's sister, Mabel, who lives in the elderly housing building." Bradley grabbed his brother's arm and tugged. "Come on," he whispered. The kids sat on the sofa across the lobby from the check-in counter. "I guess I was wrong about those white-haired people," Brian said. "But when she pulled out a camera, I thought they were the thieves." "But what happened to the two we were following?" Nate asked. "The guy with the limp and the woman with the ski mask. They went into the elderly housing place, but they didn't come out." "They're probably still inside stealing stuff from old people," Brian said. The kids got quiet. Bradley took the green note from his pocket and unfolded it on his knee. "Let's try to figure this out," he said. Lucy put her finger on WLK. "If we put an A, this becomes walk," she said. "Okay, but what about the rest? WLK into GLES?" asked Nate. "What about walk north?" Bradley said. And the two could mean the word two. Walk north to GLES. "You're a genius," Brian said. And if the N stands for north, the E on the second line might be east. I get it, Nate said. If you add 2 O's to WDY, it could mean Woody. We live on Woody Street. Walk east on Woody to D and H. Whatever that means. Maybe the H stands for your last name, Hathaway, Bradley said. And the D could be Duncan, Lucy said, or Dink Duncan. Then the P could be Pinto, our last name, Brian said. He looked at the note, then said, if you add 3 A's and an E, you get walk north on Farm Lane to Pinto. Bradley looked at the other kids. I think I get this, he said in a low voice. The thieves wrote down directions to our houses. I'll bet they plan to rob all of us. They checked out your house first, Nate. When they saw us through the window, they ran away. Right, so they decided to go to Dink's house next door, Nate said. But they saw us watching them, so they took off. Where are they going next? Bradley asked. He looked at the note again. To this GLES place? How much do you want to bet that GLES stands for Green Lawn Elementary School? Brian asked. They're going to rob our school. There are lots of computers there, Nate said. And it's closed for the holiday, so no one would notice they were stolen, Bradley said. Maybe they're at the school right now, Brian said. But we saw them go into that elderly housing building, Lucy reminded them. Why don't we just go in and ask about them? Good idea, Bradley said. The 4 kids waved at Mr. Linkletter and left the hotel. They passed the town hall and marched into the home for elderly people. A woman with white hair and pink cheeks greeted them from behind a desk. May I help you, dear? She asked Nate. Nate smiled at the woman. We're looking for a man and woman who came in here a few minutes ago, he said. He was tall and had a ponytail, Lucy said. And a limp, Brian added. He was with a short woman with a ski mask on her face, Bradley said. The woman's eyes grew wide. Yes, they came in here. And they acted very mysterious, he said. They did? Bradley asked. Yes, they were giggling like children, the woman said. Then they asked me if there was a back door. I pointed to it, and they raced out and disappeared. Did they say anything else? Nate asked. Well, I'm a little hard of hearing, the woman said, but when they ran past my desk, I think I heard the woman say, Fix the clock, Artie. The kids just looked at her. Fix what clock? Brian asked. And who's Artie? Nate said. I'm sure I have no idea, the old woman said. Our clock is working just fine. My brother is named Arthur, but no one calls him Artie. Can we go out the back door too? Bradley asked the woman. Of course, dear, she said, watching the kids tear down the hallway. Goodness, everyone is in such a hurry. The kids ran outside. No one was there. The falling snow was covering the back door steps. If there were any footprints, they're hidden under the snow, Brian said. He looked over a short fence at the police station next door. I bet the thieves didn't go there. Well, where did they go? Lucy asked. The kids stared into the falling snow. It was getting darker. They could hear music coming from Main Street. People were getting ready to celebrate New Year's Eve. I guess we better go home, Bradley said, for the 6 o'clock party. What did you say? Lucy asked Bradley. Mom wants us home before 6 o'clock, Bradley said, for the party. 6 o'clock party, Lucy muttered. Oh my gosh. What if that's what she heard? What if that is what who heard? Brian asked, shaking his head. Lucy wiped some snow off her face. The woman inside said she heard one of the thieves say, Fix the clock, Artie. The boys looked at her. So? Nate said. Well, what if that was wrong? Lucy asked. What if the woman said 6 o'clock party and not fix the clock, Artie? The boys stared at Lucy. You think they're coming to our party? Brian asked. Why would they do that? To rob you, Nate said. To tie us all up in the barn and take all your Christmas presents. Lucy nodded. The crooks know where we live, right? She asked. That note Bradley found has directions to each house. They tried Nate's first. Then they spied on Dink's house. So now, that's where they went when they ran out the back door, Bradley said. North on Farm Lane to P, and P is for Pinto. That's us. But we don't have anything to steal, Brian said. My piggy bank is empty and... Laptops, bro, Bradley said. Josh has one. Mom has one. Dad got a new one for Christmas. They took Mrs. Wong's and now they're after ours. But how do the crooks know we have laptops? Brian asked. And how do they know about the party? Nate asked. Are these crooks mind readers too? If we're right about them, then they could be part of a ring of thieves, Lucy said. My dad once told me about some thieves in California. The leaders sent their crooks all over the country. In California, they were after gold. They break into houses and look for jewelry like rings and charm bracelets. Come on, Bradley said. Let's head home. If they come, we'll be ready for them. Thank you. Be sure to tune in next week for chapters 5 and 6. Goodbye.